guys, so this evening, just what I'm going to go over is, the narcissist and some of their sort of internal, condition that leads them to act the way they do. So one thing to note is that when you're dealing with a narcissist, remember you're dealing with somebody who has a very low level of emotional intelligence. You're basically dealing with somebody who has the emotional intelligence of a small toddler, right? That they're sort of tantrum throwing. That's sort of their lens that they look at the world is through this like really almost like a small child, right? So low level of emotional intelligence. No empathy, or if they have any empathy, what it is it's cognitive empathy. I was listening to a psychologist that was talking about the difference between sort of cold empathy and warm empathy, and what the difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy is. And so cognitive empathy is like if somebody breaks their leg, right? And you have cognitive empathy if you broke your leg in the past, and then you see somebody that has a broken leg, like you can relate in that, oh, that must hurt. I know what that feels like because I had that happen to me in the past. But it's a very detached form of empathy. It's like, can relate to it because that person had that experience in the past. But emotional empathy is somebody has a broken leg. You may have had that experience in the past, and you can feel, you can emotionally feel, what it might be like to be in that pain, or to have that, the pain of that broken leg. You emotionally connect with other people. So, emotional empathy is where you can feel somebody else's sadness or grief or pain. You can connect with it. So that's sort of warm empathy versus cold empathy. And cold empathy is, some narcissists have certain levels of cold empathy or sort of cognitive empathy. Sociopaths probably don't have either one. So that's just something to note. And then another thing to think about is with the narcissist, there's different theories out there by different psychologists in terms of like what their internal makeup is like. But in general, a lot of psychologists believe that internally these people are very fragile. Like they have very low self-esteem. They're very shame-based people, right? So internally, they have awful fragile self-esteem, so much that they require outside validation to make them feel okay, right? They don't have a strong sense of self. They don't have a strong core, right? So they're needing, all this outside validation to fill them up. So really inside they're very cowardly and weak, and they're not strong people. They put this mask on of perfection and invulnerability. They won't allow themselves to be vulnerable. And as we know through a lot of like Brene Brown's work and other psychologists, is that vulnerability is actually a great strength. If you are courageous enough to be vulnerable with other people and risk, that you may get hurt, and oh well, and maybe you won't get hurt, and either way, like you're going to be okay. Like that's an incredible sign of strength. So the narcissist has the antithesis of that, in that they don't allow themselves to have any vulnerability. They do not allow themselves to be emotionally intimate with another human being. All of their relationships are surface. All of their relationships are shallow. They are, get into these relationships with people for what people can do for them. They treat people as appliances, right? But in general, think of this, where you have this incredibly fragile ego. You absolutely cannot stand any slight or any criticism. A lot of times the criticism is perceived criticism. You're not even being criticized, but your perception of the world is so distorted that you think you're being criticized when somebody's just bringing up like, maybe a need they have in the relationship, or some reasonable things to sort of hash out in a relationship. But you take everything so personally that you think it's like an affront. You think if somebody asks for, say, more physical intimacy, it's like a demand, and they're, criticizing you and letting you or making you feel like, you're less than or whatever. Imagine being in that headspace where you're that sensitive, where you literally live and die by what other people think of you. It's a very, it's an awful headspace. I can't imagine being in that headspace. It would be a terrible way to live. And then the other part of it is because they don't allow emotional intimacy, all their relationships are surface and shallow. They don't have this deep level of emotional intimacy, so they are they live a half life. It's not a real life. It's a half life. It's very stunted, and they're not having the full range of emotional experience that human beings that's available to sort of fully formed human beings. And that I think that's a really sad, a particularly sad way to live. So if it helps you, I'm not saying that you should slip on your compassion or slip on your empathy, but if it helps you to understand that these are like small toddlers who have this incredibly fragile self-esteem. They absolutely cannot, tolerate any sort of criticism. They have no introspection. They have no ability to self-reflect. They go about living in their life hurting all sorts of people, and they don't take any personal responsibility for that. They don't even take pause and go, oh, maybe this pattern that I keep doing over and over and over again in all my relationships that's totally dysfunctional ends up hurting people. Maybe it's not working. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe I can look at myself. Maybe I can do some work on myself. But they won't. They won't go to therapy. They won't do any work on themselves because they don't think there's anything wrong with being that way. They don't think there's anything wrong with gaslighting and cheating and lying and manipulating and bilking people out of money and financially abusing people and just like none of this. They don't think there's anything wrong with it. They think it's all the other 7 billion people on the planet that are the problem. So because of that, unfortunately, it's very hard for narcissists to get any sort of help unless they're like court ordered, because they don't think that they're the problem. They think it's everyone else, right? And they're always the sort of proverbial like victim, like they're the victim, they're the martyr. This is just happening to them. Like they cheat, they lie, they steal, they gaslight, they manipulate, but this is happening to them, right? People like yourself, you're probably, if you were in a relationship with a narcissist, you probably reacted, right? You reacted because, come on, when you're being manipulated, gaslighted, given the silent treatment, treated like crap, you are going to react as a normal human being would. And you're going to react with anger and sadness and frustration, especially when they frustrate all communications with their manipulative form of communication. These people, create chaos. They create frustration. So of course, you probably acted out in some way or another. But I'm here to tell you that just you probably acted out as a normal human being would with, frustration. And you're the normal one, right? You're the one that has this full range of emotional capability that you're able to tap into and experience. And they're the outlier. And a lot of narcissists will make their victims, feel like the victims are like overly emotional. No, the victim or the survivor has emotions. They have feelings. The narcissist in general doesn't. They're dead inside. Their feelings are deadened. So, if you were brainwashed to believe that you're the abnormal one because you have human emotions and you reacted to piss poor behavior, I'm here to tell you you're probably the normal one. So again, I don't know if this is helpful, but that was just a little information on the difference between cold empathy and warm empathy and emotional and cognitive empathy, and a little bit of insight into the internal life of the narcissist, which is a very, very fragile ego, very, very fragile self-esteem, absolutely terrified of abandonment. A lot of this stuff goes back to their deep-seated abandonment issues, probably from childhood. But yeah, these people are absolutely terrified of abandonment, yet they end up creating scenarios where they get abandoned because they'll cheat and lie and do all these nasty things to their partner. So they usually do get abandoned because that's what they've created. And then a lot of times when they're doing the whole like discard thing that they do that because it's sort of preemptive. They do that so to avoid being abandoned, right? And so really that's also the coward's way, you know, like if you are in the ring and you're fighting for a relationship and you're trying to make it work and you get abandoned, all right, so the person left, but you were in the ring and you did the best you could. Good for you, you know. But a narcissist will often like discard or abandon somebody because they can't handle the blow to their ego of being abandoned. They're really that childish. I mean, you are dealing, you know, you're not dealing with somebody who has a high level of emotional intelligence here. You are dealing with a, you know, again, like somebody who has the like emotional makeup of a toddler. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that you should, again, slip on your compassion, but maybe just get a little bit of empathy for the, you know, the narcissist, in that they're so tortured. Their thinking is so distorted. It's so off, you know, it's wacky, right? So their thinking is so distorted. It's so missing the mark. It's so illogical that, you know, you're dealing with this toddler. And of course, get out of the relationship, because adults, you know, don't date toddlers, right? I'm sorry, but it's sort of weird to say that. But, you know, of course, exit the relationship. You don't need to be with this person that has this, you know, ridiculously low level of emotional maturity. But, you know, maybe this can help you to have a little bit of understanding into, you know, these, you know, the head of a narcissist. They're very, you know, they're cowards. They're weak, and you're probably quite strong, especially if you've been able to endure their abuse. So, you know, but get out of it. You don't need to be enduring their abuse. There's no reason to stay in a dysfunctional relationship. And then do some work on your, sorry, my battery. Do some work on your sort of, you know, pathological giving, your, you know, this part in you that thinks it's okay to, you know, make a million excuses for people's bad behavior. How about there's bad behavior and set a boundary, and if they don't respect it, then get out, or you know, break up with them or whatever. Like boundaries. Only you can decide what's going to work for you, and let your yes mean yes, let your no mean no. Say what you mean what you say, and don't be mean when you say it. You know, these are just all some of the ways that you can, you know, incorporate into your being to like really set clear, strong boundaries and do incredible and radical self-care. You know, narcs are never going to change. They're always going to cheat. They're always going to lie, gaslight, all of that. They're going to have the same relationship pattern of idealization, devaluation, and discard. If you talk to their ex-partners, they did the same thing over and over and over again. This is their pattern. They do not change, or very rarely. So there's nothing you can do to change the narcissist. What you can do is get the focus back on you, do incredible healing, do a lot of self-care, and, you know, figure out the parts in you that, you know, looked past this pathology, or ignored it, or didn't see it, and, you know, didn't have clean boundaries. So sorry, I know this one's really off, rambling, sort of off the cuff, but I just had a couple of requests for, you know, sort of understanding of their empathy issues, and that's, you know, it's not very comprehensive, but it's the best I could do for this evening. So yeah, I'll keep making these videos. I hope they're helping you guys. You know, I feel your pain. You are a warrior. You will heal. You will get out of this. This is a ridiculous scenario to be in. You are going to rise above it, and you are strong. You are a badass. So hope you have a wonderful day, and talk soon. Bye.